What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Burning Hammer podcast. We are here with a very special guest, another interview coming your way, our third interview in a hopefully very long interview series that we have started here on the Burning Hammer podcast. We have a ECW original referee. We have he is the current DAWG matchmaker. He has done just about everything that you can name in this wrestling business, from refereeing matches, from commentary to booking matches. You may have seen him take a couple of bumps here and there throughout his career. The one and only Jim Molineaux. Jim, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to get right into it, we like to start this question off with everybody we go on is just when did you get into pro wrestling, and like what got you into pro wrestling at the very beginning?
Well, I'm so old that the original Greek Olympics happened. That's what got me. No, my dad was a fan. You know, I was thinking the other day about interviews, and it's almost like a mad. There should be a Mad Lib sheet where who got you blank got me into wrestling. Fill in the blank, dad, granddad, grandma, or whatever. Who was your favorite wrestler? Fill in the blank. But no, I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so I grew up watching WWF. So it was on Saturday afternoons or 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure what time, but I'd watch it with my dad. And at the time, it was Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund and Tito Santana and the Samoans, and that's the kind of era I was looking at the time. Superstar Billy Graham, the little bit that Dusty came in for Vince Sr., all that era. Got away from it for a while because the Flyers happened for the Philadelphia areas, winning the Stanley Cup. So we all started playing street hockey and gave up on sitting around on Saturday afternoon. So that, and then guitar came in, trying to play in a band and all that kind of stuff. And then I got back to wrestling when I was older in life, because I didn't start my training until I was 28. So I got away from it for a while and got back into it.
Interesting, really interesting. That's what made you, like, when you say you got back into it at a later age? So I guess that's so often you hear that it's just like the childhood dream. It's all they've ever thought about, and as soon as they turn 18, they start training. And so what was the and obviously we've a couple times we've interviewed some in-ring talent some before, so we haven't interviewed a referee or someone who's done more behind the scenes work before. So how did you get into the business, and like what made you get into it?
I always wanted to have or be a part of the spotlight, whether it was in front of it or behind it. In high school, I did the dramas, but I wouldn't do the musicals. I would work backstage on the musicals. So I always wanted to be a part of the spotlight. Again, back to either playing hockey and wanting to be a hockey player or learning the guitar and playing a band. So, there's your, always searching for a bit of the spotlight. And a guy that I worked with, I had a regular warehouse job. And by this time at 28, I was married and had my two kids. So we were just, always talking about wrestling and started watching it again. And now the NWA was on in the Philadelphia area. So we didn't have just Hulkamania. We found Ric Flair, we found the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and all that. So we decided we'd go to a show, and they were advertising the NWA's Great American Bash for 1987, I guess it was. And so we got tickets, and we went, and one of the ring announcers was Joel Goodhart, who went on to start TWA, and he had a fan club at the time. So I joined the fan club. My buddy took off and didn't continue on with it. So I joined the fan club and became friends with Joel. And started thinking, I want to do this. I want to get involved somehow, but I'm short and fat and already 28, and there's no way I'm going to be a wrestler. So I actually wanted to be a manager, had a character all set up and everything, little storyline and all behind. And I approached Joel and said, hey, can you use a manager? He said, no, I already have a couple of managers, but I could use a referee. And at the time he had a school. So he gave me the speech on the school, and he said, call me back in a couple of days. Think about it. Call me back. So hung up and talked it over with my wife, and called him back 10 minutes later and said, I'll be there next Tuesday at the school. And that's where it started. 8 weeks of only 8 weeks of training. And I did my first match.
Wow. So, what company did you do your first match for?
Tri-State Wrestling, Joel Goodhart's
Very
company.
Cool. Very
so
cool.
So I went from Tri-State to ECW when he shut down, and Todd started ECW, kind of brought everybody over. So I pretty much stayed right in the groove there.
Now,
gotcha.
do you get any sort of like certificate or anything when you like graduate this training school to like verify yourself?
No, I mean, you got the crap chopped out of you, and here you go. Go ahead and have at it. But no, Joel's school was associated with Tri-State, so automatically you go right to Tri-State. And the first show that I worked, I only did one match, but that was okay. And then it was a little while before I did another match, because actually that weekend it was a triple shot. And the other two shows were in New Jersey. And at the time, New Jersey needed a license, and my license stuff hadn't come in yet. So I wasn't able to do the other events that weekend. So that was my start.
So kind of like going into what you just said. So Tri-State kind of dissolved, and ECW was shortly kind of started thereafter. So you've kind of been around with ECW from the very, very beginning. So what was that like in those very early days of ECW? And when did you really know that or have a feeling that like you guys had like something special on your hands there? And like, when did you feel like it really started to take off there in ECW?
Well, when it first started off, it just seemed like any normal independent company, not even a territory. We do we do the bar shows at Market Street at 8th and Market, which is I think now a Ross, but it was the Philadelphia Sports Bar, and we would run events there, and of course do rec centers and high schools and all that kind of stuff. So they were sporadic. It wasn't a regular thing like ECW became. When I thought we really became something it wasn't even when we got TV. I think it was when we stopped offering free beer and hot dogs to the crowd to come to the shows. That may have had something to do with it, but kind of when we already had TV, and if you look at the early TVs, there were a lot of empty seats. When you started seeing people filling up those bleachers, then we're like, oh, we got something going on here now. And when we started getting worldwide coverage from the magazines, the After magazines, and the Japanese magazines, that's when I was like, wow, we're turning into something. I'm not sure how far we're going to go or what we're going to do, but I'm going to at least hang on to the tail of this horse and go for a ride.
Yeah. So when ECW did eventually, when it was in that craze that it was in, what was that like for you, going from somebody who I guess at 27 years old wasn't in the business at all, and a few years later you're right in the middle of what is the hottest thing in wrestling?
Yeah, that was really weird. It's still, at only a couple of years of the business, I'm still learning my P's and Q's backstage, and I'm still green around the gills, and just trying to feel my way around still, and just like I said, going for the ride. You come in and John and I John Finnegan, the other referee who was there through the whole time with me through ECW, were the only two guys to have lasted the entire run of the company. We'd figure out what matches we're going to do. And, all of a sudden I'm looking at the lineup and I'm like, wow, I'm working with Terry Funk. I'm working with Kevin Sullivan. I'm like, holy crap. These are guys I was, watching on TV a few years ago, and now I'm in the ring with them. It was really surreal.
That is incredible. That was actually like leading right into my next question, guys. Like Terry Funk, like, I'm sure he was definitely one, like you just said. Was there a moment like when you got into the ring was there a certain wrestler when you were standing in the ring with them refereeing a match and you were like, what is going on? You were kind of starstruck by who was standing in front of you.
Well, I have to go back to Tri-State because
Mm-hmm.
Joel would bring in some matches, not just people, but a match from territories around the country. And Herb Abrams UWF was running at that time, and they were doing something with David Sammartino and Cactus Jack McFoley. And we worked with Cactus before he had been in for Joel plenty of times. And that was like, wow, these are guys who are on TV on a regular basis, national TV on a regular basis. That was pretty cool. And then he also brought in Billy Jack Haynes and Crush from Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't actually that. It was a couple months later seeing the coverage in one of the Bill Apter's magazines. And I'm like, holy crap, this is big. I'm like, you had the magazine. I'm like, I'm holding it up. Look, there I am. In the court. That's my hand. The referee's always in part of the picture or accidentally in the way. But they were like the first two really big ones. So I was like, wow, maybe I'm heading the right direction here. But definitely the biggest one for me with ECW was the triple threat match between Shane Douglas, Sabu, and Terry Funk. That really put the company on the map, and to be a part of that really meant something.
Yeah, that's super cool. So do you have a favorite wrestler to referee for? Maybe someone who made your life a little easier?
No, early in ECW, Shane Douglas was one I always used to work with. Shane and I got along. We still get along. I just saw Shane last weekend at a wrestling convention in Atlantic City. Get along great. It's just, working with guys over and over again, you establish a feeling of knowing how their matches usually go and where I should be and how to stay out of the way and what to expect. Justin Credible was one. Jerry Lynn, Lance Storm. They're all guys that knew what was pretty much coming and felt really comfortable with. You never knew what was going to happen with New Jack or the Dudleys. But I always felt safe in the ring with them. I never felt like I was in mortal danger.
So, do you have a favorite match that you've refereed?
No, I can't say that I have a favorite. I always refer to it as matches that are important to the company that I was lucky to be part of. The first one was that triple threat match. That really got ECW on the map in the world of tape trading, which was big at the time. So that was the first step for ECW. Next, I would probably have to say Taz and Sabu at Barely Legal, the first pay-per-view. Wasn't the main event. It was pushed as the main event because it was pushed for 2 years that they never touched. And then finally, boom, Barely Legal, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
I was the referee for that. I was very lucky to have done that. Those, I think, are probably the two most important matches for me in the history of the company. There are other the entire feud between Tommy Dreamer and Raven, where took 3 years for Tommy to finally pin Raven. That's an important storyline, not just in ECW, but I think anywhere. But yeah, they're I guess what I would consider my two, if you have to use the word favorite, yeah, but I think they're important to the company. It was always the luck of the draw, being lucky to get this match. Also, you know what? I'm gonna throw in there. This was a fun match, I guess. I would say Guerrero or Molineaux, any one of those, whichever ones I had. Same with John. We'd switch off. One night he'd have it, next night I'd have it. We'd switch off back and forth. But yeah, Molineaux and Guerrero were incredible matches to be a part of.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just be able to see them tear the house down in a front row seat. On a regular basis.
Yeah, I always say referees have the best seat in the house.
Yeah.
You still have to do your job. You can't just stand there and watch the match like some of you do. But yeah, it's the best seat in the house.
So something else that was super popular alongside tape trading was wrestling video games. And I don't know if you know this, but you're actually credited being in the ECW Anarchy Rules video game.
I am.
So
I actually have the thing hanging up on the wall from the cheat book.
What was that process like?
That was all right. I mean, again, because it was ECW, we didn't get paid for it. But we went up to New York to the Acclaim studios. The game was made by Acclaim, and we went up and they did the 3D thing where they take your picture with the camera circles around you, and you did voiceovers for it. And it was the same game engine as I think Raw. WWE old WWF game. But they're horrible games. Compared to what you can do now in a game. Not that I would know. I don't. There's no way I'm playing video games nowadays. But yeah, I was a character. You had to win the ECW belt as Rhino, and then that would unlock my character.
Oh, unlockable character. All right.
Yeah, there were a couple of us that were unlockable characters. John Finnegan was one. I can't remember who else was. There were a couple of us who were unlockable characters.
Well, I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for that game if I ever am at some sort of place where maybe a thrift store or something like that. I got to get my hands on
market. That. Yeah. Go up to the Columbus flea market. Somebody might have it.
So let's transition from referee to trainer. You trained for a little bit. What was that process like from going from referee to then training wrestlers?
Well, I can't really say that I did a lot of the training. I showed a lot the guys who would first come in how to lock up and how to run the ropes, and then they went off to the next guy. But what happened with ECW, it shut down, and I was looking to keep the juices flowing, and the Monster Factory was less than 5 miles away from my house, so I went over there. And I talked to Larry, and I talked to Ed Atlas, who was the trainer at the time. And really, I wanted to help out with their shows. But got to the point where I was hanging out there 4 nights a week. So I started helping with the training, like I said, with the guys first coming in. So when I got there, there were guys who were already there who were almost ready to leave and move on. Cliff Compton, who was Domino, Deuce and Domino, and Tank Tolan, who did a lot in Ring of Honor, but before that was one of the tag team were the Dick Brothers.
Yeah,
on
SmackDown. Like the Chippendale character, yeah.
Right, and I'm still friendly with Tank. In fact, we're going to talk about Tank in a little bit when we talk about some dog events coming up, but I helped out with not necessarily their training, but their, where their heads were. I think I helped out a lot with that, with the psychology and things like that. Then Sheamus came along, and we worked with Sheamus, and probably the best thing I did for him was tell him to go home. You guys, like your visa's about ready to run out. Go home, or you'll never come back here. So he actually went back to Ireland and got trained there, and then called me one day and said, "Look, WWE's coming to town. Do you think you can get them to look at me?" And Tommy Dreamer was in the office at the time, so I got a hold of Dreamer, and they looked at him. And they didn't take him, but the next year that they came through, Finley knew of him and got friendly with him, and he was the one who got him to the next step. We had some other guys who came through. We had QT Marshall, and then the last guy that probably feel any kind of responsibility for, we called him Luis the Punisher Martinez, and everybody knows him now as Damian Priest. And so we had
Campeon.
him. We had him from the very beginning. There was business things between personnel, and so we were running OTW shows because they really had no promotion. So Ed and I started OTW through the Monster Factory, and then Monster Factory went off on their own, and we kept OTW and started training guys under the OTW banner. And so Priest stayed with us for a little bit. Then he went back to the Monster Factory, and he got to WWE through them. But yeah, Nick Camarado, you guys came to some of the OTW shows. I don't know if Nick was with us when you saw him when you came to the shows or not. He was there for a little bit, and then he went back.
Yeah, we saw Nick Camarado. Nick Camarado. Saw a few big names there. Few guys that ended up are still around. Nick Camarado, Mike Orlando.
Right. Mike's down in Florida doing a lot of independent.
Yeah, and I was gonna say one of my favorite indie wrestling moments that I've favorite indie wrestling moment I've ever been to was Jimmy Lloyd's first match. I remember Jimmy Lloyd going to shows for almost a year when Jimmy Lloyd was selling popcorn at the and then we saw him make his first match, and you see the stuff he's been doing now, making huge waves on the indie scene. So that's really cool. I always go back and say that I was at his first match.
We had a lot of guys who make a name for themselves on the indies. He was one way back in the day. Cindy Rogers was made a really good name for herself. She had a really long feud, and they would take it all over against Mercedes Martinez. We've had. I think I can say happily that I've helped people get to certain levels that they're content with. Everybody of course wants to be a superstar and make a ton of money, but I think the realization comes in of the business, and I think a lot of them are content with what they did.
So why don't you sort of talk us through coaching some of the wrestlers that you have in the mental aspect of it? Because we've talked to a couple of wrestlers before about just how mentally challenging it could be to train for so long before you get your first match, or to have whatever their goal is. Maybe it's unrealistic, maybe it's not, but why don't you sort of talk us through that process?
The first thing I really want to do is find out their physicalities. You have to see what they can do, see what they want to do, and then change their mind because it's probably wrong. We've had guys come to us that were 6'3", and you say, "Who's your favorite wrestler?" And they say, Rey Mysterio, and they want to do the 619. And there are guys the opposite. There are guys that are the size of Mysterio, and their favorite wrestler is the Undertaker. So you got to give them make sure they have the right mindset, and there's physical stuff. We really didn't teach the training, the physical training of it, where go to the gym and run, or whatever needed to be done to get into shape. That was up to the guys to do. We would help them, guide them, but we didn't have the gym facilities at OTW or at the Monster Factory when I was there. But you would really have to kind of see where they want to go and what they want to do, and what kind of character they have. Really, I didn't want to hear about characters that they had in their heads until more than halfway through their training to see what they can do and what they can't do. And if, there was something in mind that they thought that they could do, but they just plain old can't do it, then let's go in another direction. You have to look at their positive accomplishments and physicalities, and then look at whatever, doesn't work for them. I think I learned that from Paul Heyman. Paul was great at being able to point out what someone can do well and covering up what kills their character.
Yeah, it's funny you actually bring up that stuff with like big guys but want to do small guy stuff, because I'm 6'3", and literally growing up, Rey Mysterio was my favorite wrestler. I like have pictures from like birthday parties of me like wearing his gear. So it's just funny you bring that up.
Yeah, I actually remember that the one year that we were me and him were both John Cena and Rey Mysterio for Halloween one year when we were younger, and but he was taller than me. And he was Rey Mysterio. I was John Cena, so it didn't make a lot of sense. Kind of going back to where you were talking about like that transition of how OTW kind of came to be and just putting on shows for where you start out at Monster Factory. What kind of made you make the decision where you were like, all right, I want to decide to create my own like promotion and take this, you know what I mean, and kind of take this on and try to do weekly shows and stuff like that?
Well, it really wasn't just mine. It was Ed Atlas. He came along with me for the ride. He didn't stay with the Monster Factory. He came along with me, and it was like mostly I went along with him. But when the company was ready to split in two, the building that we were in Belmar, New Jersey, for those of you who outside of New Jersey, there are two Belmars, and this is the one that was close to Philadelphia, not along the shoreline. The building was in my name, so I said, all right, well, we're going to stay here, and you guys can find a facility of your own. And so we ran shows there for quite a while. And it was a nice build. It was first of all, it's a great location. 10 minutes over the Walt Whitman Bridge, right off of 295 and 42. It was great. And, it was an older building. We would be having matches, and you'd see me running around in the background of the videos, bailing out buckets of water out the back door. The roof leaked like Niagara Falls. So we started looking for another place, and the building that you guys know in Williamstown opened up, and it was a little smaller for seating, but it was a taller ceiling, so it worked for us. And when we first got there, which the place was already set up in Belmar so that we could have two separate locker rooms, heels and faces, and the guys never discussed their matches. They were told their finishes, and that was it. They didn't go over anything until they met in the ring. They called it right there. And in fact, I had guys who came in from just the independents who said, wow, who I've seen recently in the last handful of years that I'm back out refereeing on the independents, said, I learned so much by not going over a match at OTW. And they thanked me every time. So when we got to Williamstown, we built separate locker rooms, but eventually those rotted out, and so we ended up having everybody in the same locker room, and unfortunately, it degenerated back to everybody going over their matches. But yeah, it wasn't really completely my idea. Ed was there for quite a long time, and then he moved back to Canada to be close to family. So then it became my ball to run with. And I really wanted to kind of stay behind the scenes. I very rarely, you guys came to shows, you very rarely saw me in the ring being involved. I didn't referee. I refereed maybe 3 matches, I think, the whole time.
Yeah. Hardly.
And I would come out and thank everybody for, after intermission, thank everybody for coming out and see you next week. And here's what we're going to do next week. And you can get your tickets in advance and all that kind of stuff. And then when Ed went away, like I said, it became pretty much mine. But Brian Johnson was my trainer. Brian, I love him to death. Great trainer, great wrestler. And I relied on him a lot. He did a lot of the booking. I really relied on him a lot, especially when at one point I had a heart attack and kind of slowed down a little bit, not being there quite as much. And he really ran with the ball. But it was time for him to move on to Ring of Honor. We had a couple other guys step in. And then it got to be too much for me. I was still the adult in the room, so I was the one that was always worrying about the rent being paid and all the bills being paid, and things were slowing down with students and whatnot, because there's a wrestling school in every corner of New Jersey. You can trip over them. So it was time to move on, and I'm friendly with Matt Tremont, and Matt took over the building, and that's where H2O now is, and everybody knows that. And they run a lot there, and they run other people in there too. So I just packed everything up and moved it to a storage room. And we ended up running two different buildings on a regular basis, one in Millville and one in Lindenwold. And we would do 8 shows between those, 4 in each building a year. Mm-hmm. And we ran Stockton University 3 times, and I think they're the things that I'm the proudest of, because they were fundraisers for their veterans organization to help the returning veterans become students and help them get assimilated with school and all that kind of stuff. And we did really good there, and I'm really happy with those things. But that was what we did at the end, and then finally COVID came along, and it just became too much, and you're not everything was mine, but I still had to pay for storage, and it's just too much. And an offer came along to sell the ring, so I did, and I was like, that's it, we're done, see ya.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot to try to do all by yourself. Like, I can't even imagine trying to manage all of that stuff along with everything you're doing outside of wrestling at the same time.
Still, I mean, I have a company that's my own, that's outside of wrestling. I have a courier service, so I'm doing that Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday too. So it was a lot, and it was time to kind of let things go. But I just, like, when I sold the ring, I sold it to ECWA, and the guys were loading up the ring, and Ryan, who owns the ECWA, said, "Hey, would you be interested in reffing again?" And I was like, I haven't done it for 15 years on a regular basis. He said, well, we have our Super 8 coming up next month. How would you like to do it? You can work with John again. I was like, okay, I'm in. That's all I had to say was work with John, and I'm in. And it worked out, and I just started putting on the internet, hey, I'm back. I'm looking to do some matches. If you could use me, or need me for a seminar, or play-by-play or anything like that. And 3 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's awesome. So how did you get involved with DAWG?
Very accidentally. It was a big mistake. No, DAWG actually was renting our ring when we moved to our storage unit. They were renting our ring. We did ring rentals, and they were one of the ring rentals, and so we did that. And we had a sound system, so we did the music too. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to, get involved with helping with the matches?" So I was like, "Yeah, I'm glad to do that." So once I got rid of the ring and everything, they're kind enough to keep me on to be the matchmaker, and been doing that now for a handful of years.
So what goes into making these matches for the DAWG events?
You have to look at your audience. You have to try to figure out what would appeal to the type of building that you're in. DAWG used to run a fitness center. So they used to have they had an indoor football area, and they had basketball courts and everything. So it wasn't just a gym. It was all a complete rec center. So you would have kids coming and families and people from different backgrounds. You have to look at the town that you're in, and it's just there are a lot of things, and look at who's a good matchup for your champions, who might be a name to bring in that people would be attracted to. At one, I kept saying his name over and over again. Finally, they did bring him in before he got scooped up, but Brian Pillman Jr. was a guy. I was like, you got to bring this kid in, and so we did have him in once, and then AEW called. And now, of course, NXT. So there's a lot of things to look at. You look at your champion and who would be a good matchup for your champion, who's out there, or who hasn't finished their story with a champion. You could have unfinished matches. Double disqualifications and a bitterness between two, and you're like, wow, I have to capitalize on that as a promoter, as a matchmaker, as a company. We need to capitalize on the anger between these two and see what kind of match we get.
So sorry, Mark. I just had a quick question, but based off like what he was saying, it made me think of a couple things. I would say like, so I think like being a booker and a promoter is something that's always been kind of a dream of mine. So I think one of the questions I have, and something that I'm really curious to hear, is so, and I'm sure there's still that wrestling fan inside of you. So how do you walk that line of, making sure you're not just building a card that is just that, how do you walk that line between you're like, all right, I love this match, but it really might not be the best match for what's going for the show that we're putting on. Like how do decisions like that come into play?
You have to kind of feel it out. You have to look back, step back, and look at it as the fan. There might be someone that I get a kick out of, that I really enjoy, but my style of fandom is different than somebody else's. Mm-hmm. You have to look, like, if you're looking at names, like if you're the next two DAWG, not that DAWG would use anyone, but deathmatch style guys are not really the DAWG's brand. And I wouldn't use them for the next two events that we would have coming up anyway, even if they were friends and available, whatever. One's at a church and one's at a middle school. It's not doable. So there's a lot of things you have to look at when you put something like this together. You have your cast of characters. I shouldn't say characters. I hate using that word, but your usual guys, your roster that you have a standard of, and then it's putting a puzzle together. It's making a puzzle and seeing that the pieces fit together properly.
What's the process like of like going outside of like the pool of wrestlers that you currently have, and like trying to get someone that maybe you saw a clip of on social media and you're trying to get them into your company? How would you go about trying to recruit them for an event?
Well, I'll give you one guy specifically, and we don't have a match for him yet. The gentleman's name is Pat Sawyer, and I ran into him at an Excite show in New York, and I looked at him and I said H.C. Loke from ECW, we invited me up there to work that event, and say, hey, look at some of my guys, see what you think. Let me know what you think. And when I saw this kid work, I shouldn't say kid, he's a grown man, but everybody's a kid to me. But when I saw him work, I saw a very young Damian Priest. And I was like, wow, this guy's got to get out there and get some work. So I've been ringing the Pat Sawyer bell for a while with with DAWG, and they're finally bringing him in. And he's really an excellent worker. He still needs a lot to learn, but getting out there and working with people is probably the best way to learn. You want to elevate yourself, and the only way you can really do that is by working with people better than you and learning from them, and that's what we want to give him the opportunity to do.
Absolutely. Cool. Like, speaking of like going outside, like the pool, and further going on what you were just talking about, one of the upcoming shows, I think it's the October show at Pennsville Middle School. You have the champion Breaker Morant. He's taking on Spencer Slade from NWA. Tell us a little bit about like how that match came to be. It's looks like it could be like the a technicians showcase right there for anybody that's a fan of the pure style of wrestling.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, Spencer's not one person that was on my radar because I don't really get to watch a lot of the modern day stuff. That's why Pat Sawyer, I saw him live. A lot of the guys I'll recommend are people that I've seen live. So I went to some NWA stuff and saw him, and I was like, wow, okay, I can see what he can do, and I can see what he can do against wrestler A, wrestler B. Even Breaker was one of the choices. We're like, yeah, we got to go with this, and hopefully with the NWA banner attached to him, that will help bring more people in. It's harder to do now, although I think now it's going to be easier. I just heard the WWE said that when guys are released, they're allowed to have their names down.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So if that's it's a lot easier to promote your champion against I'll just say the Ultimate Warrior, as opposed to formerly known as the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Or some other name that they're using now because they can't use the name that they had in the ring that most people would know. So
October 18th event. We had a man on last week by the name of Connor Schaefer.
Yes.
He's been giving you some trouble, and he specifically seems to think that you have it out for him with this match against Fallah Bahh. What's your response to that?
Well, unfortunately, he's probably listening to the wrong people and not listening to me. I just said it. Pat Sawyer, we're bringing him in so he can work with people to make himself better. So you work with people who have been places that you haven't been. So Fallah Bahh has definitely been to places where Mr. Connor has not. So, all right, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. You might get your ass kicked. You might be able to pull out a win. Who knows? But the idea, and I'm always in a trainer's mode, you're going to learn something from your experience. If you don't learn from your matches, then you shouldn't be in the business. No matter who you are or how old you are, you still have to learn from who you work with. Whether it's you're a veteran and working with someone younger than you, and you pick up things that maybe you haven't seen or done before or thought of, or the opposite way, you're a young guy and your head spins because you're in the ring with someone who maybe you shouldn't be, but eventually you have to.
So Connor also made a pretty bold claim that he vows to body slam Fallah Bahh. Do you think he can pull that off?
Maybe with the help of a couple of his friends. But I don't see that really happening.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I
and if you think it will happen, or if you don't think it will happen, make sure you come out October the 18th to Pennsville, New Jersey, the Pennsville Middle School, and see it live.
Connor has some
Yeah.
preparing to do.
The world's greatest body slam. So also some what's going around the rumor mill is that Dave Dahl, supposedly, that's the reports, he supposedly signed Connor's name to an open contract. Do you have any more information about maybe if that's true, if it's not?
Well, I had an open contract with Connor's name on it. Now, I can't say if it was signed by Connor or whether it was signed by Dave Dahl or not. But like I said, it was an open contract, and it has another signature on it. And like I said, Connor is a person, and Connor thinks that I don't like him. Connor, this is a message to you, Connor. Connor, I think you're a talented young man, and you deserve better than what you're with. And so, like I said before, working with people who have been places that you have not been before. You're working with Falabal, who's been in places before, on October the 18th. Well, September the 28th in Riverton, New Jersey at Sacred Heart Church, you're going to be working with someone else too who's been places that you have not been. In fact, he's been to the WW, well, it was F at the time, but the WWE. And I mentioned it before, I've known him for a long time, and he has no problem coming in to work with a young man who maybe deserves a lesson in one form or another. But Tank Toland will be taking on Connor the Flag Boy.
Wow. Connor was talking
You
to
heard
us
it here
about
first, folks.
there were some rumors going around that he from last week that he said he just needed to be pre-prepared for somebody. He wasn't sure who it was, but Connor, you need to start training. You need to start training now for this event because the odds are not in your favor, my friend.
Yes, I don't know. Connor Schaefer, you may not be able to body slam Falabal, but Tank Toland can sure body slam you.
Yeah, Tank's still in good shape. Tank's a little bit longer in the tooth than most people remember, but he had a great run in Ring of Honor. He was great with us in OTW, the very beginning of OTW. He had great matches for us. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. He had great in OVW. He was a tag team champion in OVW, and if you were to ask Jim Cornette, he would say Tank Toland's one of the best guys who ever came out of OVW.
Wow.
There you go, Connor. Be prepared. The Flag Boy has a lot to think about going into these next few DAWG events. So to kind of end it off, we talked about a few matches. But is there any other matches that you're really excited about? At any upcoming DAWG events?
Yeah, excuse me for looking off to the side, but I wrote it all down so I wouldn't.
No, you're good.
Of course.
Yeah, I actually talked about. I just mentioned it. September the 28th, Sacred Heart in Riverton, New Jersey. Like I said, September 28th, the championship match will be Breaker Moran against a local guy that I think is very talented. Reminds me of I would say use the word local. A local guy who kind of reminds me of Richard Holiday, Eric Martin. So that's going to be a really good match. The tag team titles, Dave Dahl and Dylan Mesh will be defended. We don't have a tag team for that yet. We don't have an opponent yet for our worldwide Grand Prix champion Goldie. We're still looking for a challenger for Goldie. But Marvelous, if you guys have seen Marvelous around for other companies locally, we use him a lot. And he's going to take on Pedro Pablo, who is moving here from Chile. So I don't know if it's going to be his first match in the U.S., but it's his first booked match in the U.S. I'm sure by the time it comes around, he may have had a match by then. Also, the old school empire of Vinny the Fixer and Patch. Patch is Vinny and Patch are two favorites from DAWG, two standards from DAWG. We'll be taking on the world's sexiest tag team. And like I said, Tank Tolan will be taking on Connor the Flag Boy. Tickets for that are $20, and they will be available at the door. But we'll have information on all of our social media places for advanced tickets when that comes along. And then we were talking a little bit about October the 18th, and that's at Pennsville Middle School in Pennsville, New Jersey. Home. Anybody know who the home of? Can they name it? Name a famous person from Pennsville.
I don't know.
Famous actor? No guesses.
No,
Bruce Willis.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Bruce Willis.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Hometown of Bruce Willis will be a DAWG event. We said Spencer Slade will be taking on Breaker. If Breaker Morant is still the champion at the time, if not, he will be taking on Eric Martin. The tag team match will be either if Dave Dahl and Dylan Mesh are still the champions, they will be taking on the Old School Empire. They have a clause in the contract for a rematch, and they will get that at that event, whoever the tag champions are. Of course, we mentioned Connor the Flag Boy. He'll be taking on Falabal, and again, we don't have a challenger for Goldie yet for the worldwide Grand Prix championship, but we'll have that soon. We'll again check social media. We'll be making those announcements, and tickets for that are also $20, and will be available at the door. And we'll give you the advance ticket sale notice.
So
Awesome.
real quick, I know there's some shenanigans that may or may not have went into Dave and Dylan winning the tag titles, because it was a 2-on-1 handicap match. Connors thought that Old School Empire had a flat tire. Some people are saying that he got attacked, but can we expect that again, or are we going to get a nice 2-on-2 matchup?
We better get a nice 2-on-2 matchup. If not, I'll make sure that there are no shenanigans for that next one. We're going to make sure that Dave Dahl is as honest as a dollar.
Great to hear. Great to hear. And before we get out of here, I just wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity to. I saw some of the merch you've made, some of the the Extreme Referee merch. I love it. So the what is it? The EC effing ref.
EC Ref and W.
Yeah, EC Ref and W. That's what it was. EC Ref and W. The acknowledge your referee. So many great ones. Where can the people get those?
You can get those at tpublic.com. tpublic is a shirt company. And if you punch in search and put in Extreme Referee, that's my storefront. And so we have, instead of the Bullet Club, we have the Referee Club. You mentioned EC Ref and W and Acknowledge Your Referee. We have 5-star referee. We have, instead of Austin 316, we have Referee 123. We have Refomania is running wild. In the Refomania font that you would expect in a red and yellow Mania shirt. But you can order shirts. You can actually look at them and order hats and hoodies and magnets, and that they can transfer all that stuff over for you. But that's where you can get all that kind of stuff. I do have some, when I do live events, I do have some EC Ref and W shirts with me that I always have available. But I also have stickers, and we have trading cards, 8x10s. If you come to a live event, I have a special 8x10 of myself and John Finnegan. And John has signed a handful of them because he doesn't do a lot of events, or we don't do a lot of events together. More on that much later. But but he has pre-signed a bunch of photos, and I'll sign it too. And you have a very rare signed photo of the two original ECW referees that were dumb enough to stick around the whole time.
Yeah,
again,
so Jim's
No,
stuff
go
will
ahead,
be linked in the description. The first link will be his storefront, along with all of DAWG stuff will be linked in the description. So we just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. We will definitely be at the upcoming DAWG events. We hope to see you there. That is September 28th, and that will be October 18th. Again, more on those in the description down below. Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, no problem. And if you're outside of the area, you can catch me working other independents throughout the area. If you go to Twitter at Jim Molineaux, all one word. Usually I'll put the dates up there, but keeping pretty busy with reffing and doing seminars. So there's a lot of stuff coming up.
Great to hear.
You heard it here.
Definitely.
Make sure to check it out.
All right,
Jim, thank you so
guys.
much again. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Burning Hammer podcast. Once again, we'll see you guys next week.